Boss fights are some of the most exciting aspects of video games. As much as games have evolved across the decades, one thing that has stayed constant is the inclusion of boss battles. From cheap move-reading bosses in fighting games to big buffy bullet sponges, bosses are some of the most memorable moments in video games. Not only do they push gamers to their limit, they also help define the protagonist. What would Crash Bandicoot be without Dr. Neo Cortex, or Shell without GLaDOS, or even Mario without Bowser? And despite being the most iconic hero-villain duo in video game history, boss fights in mainstream Mario games are not great. And these less than stellar boss fights are present throughout Mario's history. Note, we're not including spin-offs like Mario RPG, because those games have some pretty sick fights. And from the first Super Mario Bros. For the NES to the latest Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the biggest issue is redundancy. In Mario's debut, he faces Bowser 8 times on the exact same bridge. Sure, the environment changes slightly and Bowser gains some different attacks, but by all intents and purposes, the fight is the same. Heck, if you're skilled enough to reach Bowser as Big Mario, you can just tank a hit and hit the switch. Super Mario Bros. 3 did introduce Boom Boom and the Koopalings, but it's just more of the same. Boom Boom might fly or the Koopalings might have slightly different moves, but the mechanics are the same. Bounce on their heads 3 times or throw some fireballs and GG. Super Mario World did introduce some variation with the Koopalings, but not only are they all basically defeated by the same method, 3 jumps to the head, each Koopaling's gimmick is used twice. And while Super Mario Bros. 2's bosses do offer some variation, we're not including them due to the game's infamous development history. And this redundancy problem is only exacerbated in the 3D Mario games. Whether it's swinging Bowser around by his tail for each encounter in Mario 64, punching Bowser's burning butt in Galaxy, chasing Bowser's car in 3D World, kicking his butt in Odyssey, or the reintroduction of Boom Boom and the Koopalings in the new Super Mario Bros. Games. And probably the most egregious offender is that giant blooper from Super Mario Sunshine. Seriously, whichever developer saw that fight and thought, this seems fun, let's use him 3 times. Should be shot into the sun. The main problem with this repetitiveness is it robs players of that excitement of facing a new challenge. Facing Bowser Jr. and Mario Wonder over and over again gets boring fast. Mario's less than thrilling bosses is ironic considering his original mascot rival Sonic does boss fights so much better. Each boss's looks, behaviors, and weaknesses are wildly different. It's hard to describe the anticipation I felt in the original Sega Genesis Sonic games of running right until the screen stopped scrolling, the music slowly muted and was replaced by Dr. Robotnik's theme as he descended from the sky. And because every zone had a unique boss, it created this astonishing feeling of excitement and terror because you didn't know what to anticipate. You didn't know its attacks or when it was vulnerable. Sure, you knew Sonic just had to jump on it, but you didn't know when it was safe to do so. Sometimes you chase Eggman down, or other times the boss damages itself, or you'd even just play a relaxing round of Puyo Puyo, making each boss a new experience. Unlike Mario where you just... Wow! And for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, every stage had a boss fight, which was just mind-blowing. This created so many memorable moments. Seriously, just seeing what crazy contraption Dr. Robotnik cooked up is like half the reason I wanted to beat a level. And this trend of awesome bosses for Sonic continued as games transitioned into 3D. While Mario did introduce some variation from Mario 64 and beyond, they either lack the visual appeal of Sonic's bosses, or is just some souped up version of a typical enemy. We're talking the bullies, which are just black circles with feet, a giant thwomp, wiggler, top man, flip bugs, and more. Sure, they're not Koopalings, but are they really that much better? Where Sonic went from exclusively fighting Eggman to battling the water god of the Chows, a space lizard super being hurling a space station towards Earth, and a literal sun god. Yeah, I don't care how often they change up Petey Piranha, Mario's not topping that. Not only are Sonic's bosses wholly unique, they look really cool and threatening. Without even taking the story into account, just seeing one of Sonic's bosses makes me want to read up about its lore. They just fit the environment perfectly, whereas with Mario, Nintendo seemingly just threw up their hands and said, I don't know, just throw in some giant worm that spins plates. Bosses should invoke some feeling of fear, that this is something that can and will mess you up. And whether it's one of Eggman's many inventions or Sonic Frontier's behemoths, these bosses look like they're ready to perform some Mortal Kombat fatality on Sonic. Whereas, save for the dragon from Mario Odyssey, even the meanest looking boss looks like it just wants to give you a great big hug like some evil Barney the dinosaur. But looks and originality are only two aspects of what makes a boss fight great. Ultimately, I'm looking for a challenge. And because Mario and Sonic are for children, neither franchise has incredibly difficult bosses. But whereas Sonic bosses might be designed for grade schoolers, Mario's bosses feel like they're for kids in diapers. I know King Bob-omb is the first boss in the first 3D Mario game, but come on. Even as a child, I can't think of a single Mario boss that gave me problems except for that Manta Ray in Super Mario Sunshine and the final Bowser fight in Mario 64. And to be fair, I've seen even top-level speedrunners choke on this fight, so I'm giving 7-year-old me a pass. Sonic's no Dark Souls, but each boss is so varied it will take time to learn bosses' behaviors and patterns, meaning there are just some bosses that will cause a roadblock. Even as an adult, I'm busting out save states for some battles. I'm still convinced that second Tails fight in Sonic Adventure 2 battle was bugged out. This creates a fun feeling of accomplishment when players finally do overcome a boss that's been giving them difficulties. Mario does try to increase difficulty, but it's artificial. Challenges like the Daredevil comment from Mario Galaxy only prove how easy the bosses are since players are expected to beat them without taking any damage. Because boss fights only account for a fraction of a total game, the Mario games still outshine Sonic overall, but it's clear that this is an area that Sonic vastly outshines Mario in.